Hachi, 17 years. That's how long I'd been walking the same polished halls, through the sliding glass doors that always squeaked just slightly at the end, past the reception desk, where Karen used to leave a sticky note that read, "You've got this," on Mondays. I'd seen this place through mergers, product launches, 2 rebrands, and a global expansion that started with one shaky contract I helped translate on a weekend from my kitchen table, 3 time zones ahead of everyone else. I was Patricia Delgado, senior translator, cultural consultant, liaison, damage control, and occasionally the company's conscience. And then came Liam Caldwell. It was a Wednesday morning. The air felt too still. I remember it vividly because the coffee tasted off, burnt, like the filter hadn't been rinsed properly. People were whispering in clumps, glancing toward the elevator with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for celebrity sightings or fire drills. He was due to arrive at 8 Zurich. He walked in at 8:37, and he didn't walk. He glided. Liam was young, mid-30s maybe, square-jawed, sharply dressed, hair styled like a man who paid someone far too much to make it look casually windswept. He wore a navy blue suit with no tie, and the kind of smugness you could smell before you saw. His handshake, when he gave one, was limp, his smile tight and calculated. And yet, the board loved him. Fresh blood, they said. Visionary. Disruptive. Disruptive indeed. By Friday, he'd removed the VP of Sales with a one-line memo. Leadership transition. By the following Monday, he'd canceled 3 recurring strategy meetings, citing inefficiency. People began watching their backs. Conversations got shorter, hallways quieter. The copy machine broke, and no one dared submit a repair ticket. It felt like inviting attention from the wrong kind of gods. But I kept my head down. I wasn't a threat. I wasn't political. I was reliable, consistent. I showed up, met deadlines, and never made waves. That was my armor, until it wasn't. The first time he noticed me, really noticed me, was when I stepped into a Thursday review call with our German partners. The interpreter they'd scheduled, someone from an outside agency, had frozen midway through a sentence, clearly overwhelmed. Without being asked, I slipped into the conversation, translating not just the words, but the tone, the subtle pivots of meaning, the layers beneath the jargon. When the call ended, one of the German delegates thanked me in German. "She understands more than most." Liam was in the room. He said nothing at the time, but I felt his eyes on me, assessing, cataloging. 2 days later, he approached me near the elevator. No greeting, no preamble, just, "You're the translator, right?" I nodded, cautious. "Among other things." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Right, languages, that's your thing." He sounded like he was talking about knitting. "I was looking through budgets," he continued, glancing at something on his phone. "Honestly, Patricia, do we still need in-house translators? I mean, even Google Translate can do this stuff now, and it's free." My breath caught. Not in shock, no. I'd heard versions of this before, from clueless middle managers and overconfident interns, but not like this. Not from someone holding the power to erase 17 years with a single click. "It's not just about language," I said carefully. "It's about culture, meaning, relationships." He waved a hand. Sure. But that's why we have CRM data, right? Besides, we're not writing novels here, it's software. Code doesn't care about nuance." I looked at him for a moment, really looked at him. He didn't see it, not the work, not the value. Just a line item he didn't understand, and therefore didn't trust. "I wish you luck at your next meeting," I said, softly but clearly. He raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" But I didn't answer. I just smiled and stepped into the elevator. Because what he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was what that next meeting would require. And who wouldn't be there to rescue him when everything started to fall apart. But that's for Monday. And Monday was coming fast. Monday morning should have felt like any other. I arrived at the office early, hoping to get a head start on polishing the final draft of our Scandinavian rollout pitch. The building still smelled faintly of weekend disinfectant, and the lights overhead flickered to life, like they were waking reluctantly from sleep. I had just brewed my second cup of coffee when I heard the distinct sound of stilettos on polished tile. Sharp, deliberate, like punctuation marks. I glanced up from my screen, and that's when I saw her. Lena! She stepped out of the elevator like she was walking onto a fashion runway instead of the 14th floor of a multinational software company. Tall, poised, wrapped in a black trench coat and red lipstick, so bold it almost dared you to speak first. She didn't look around with curiosity. She scanned the room like a general sizing up enemy territory. She didn't come alone. Behind her trailed Gloria from HR, doing her best to keep up with her usual plastic smile. "Everyone, meet Lena," she chirped, tone just a notch too bright. "She's our new SEO specialist, here to optimize our web performance and integrate marketing with analytics strategy." Lena didn't wave, didn't smile. She simply nodded like royalty and pivoted on one heel toward the open workstation directly across from mine. Harold's old desk. Our eyes met. Her gaze held mine for a second too long, and in that blink of silence, I felt it. The unmistakable flicker of calculation. She knew who I was. She'd done her homework, and she already didn't like what she'd read. She didn't bother with introductions. She unpacked slowly, deliberately. MacBook, wireless mouse, water bottle emblazoned with a minimalist logo, and a slim leather planner. She made no small talk. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything. And from that moment, I knew. This was not going to be a quiet coexistence. Within the first week, she had reorganized the SEO dashboard layout, dismissed 3 of the proposed content strategies as algorithm illiterate, and found a way to name-drop her previous employer, some digital agency with a reputation for flashy, hollow success, at least once per meeting. By Thursday, she had appointed herself Liam's shadow. Coffee runs, calendar gatekeeping, spontaneous brainstorming sessions scheduled over other people's deadlines. They laughed often, loudly, too loudly for 2 people supposedly revolutionizing our keyword structure. She avoided me at first, carefully, but not for long. That Friday morning, during our bi-weekly international alignment meeting, I was walking the room through localization challenges for our Latin American expansion. I had spent hours that week perfecting phrasing, ensuring cultural relevance, balancing legal disclaimers with tone and rhythm. Liam wasn't there yet. Surprise, surprise. But Lena was. Front row, phone in hand, pretending not to listen until it was her moment. "So," she said suddenly, voice casual but too loud, "we're spending how much translating blog copy for Brazil again?" I paused. "Approximately. I mean, do we really need to?" She cut in, smiling sweetly. "Like, can't we just automate that? Google Translate is actually really solid now. Or ChatGPT. It's not like we're writing Shakespeare, right?" A few chuckles floated through the room. Nervous ones. I saw Connor from Product flick his eyes toward me, then back down. No one defended me. No one stopped her. I kept my expression neutral. "Actually, our Brazilian partners have explicitly requested localized, not just translated materials. The distinction matters. Tone, phrasing, even humor doesn't transfer directly." Lena shrugged. "Still feels bloated. Maybe we just need to retrain client expectations." That was her favorite phrase. Retrain client expectations. Like clients were toddlers throwing tantrums over bedtime, not million-dollar accounts with decades of loyalty. I held her gaze. That might work in a domestic campaign, but disrespecting linguistic context in global markets doesn't just kill conversions, it breaks trust. And once trust is gone, no optimization strategy will recover it. She tilted her head, smiling like I was quaint. "Wow, you're really passionate about this." My heart thudded once, hard. "I am." Liam strolled in 15 minutes later, didn't bother asking what he missed, and skipped to a new agenda item about cost-saving tactics in redundant departments. Lena smirked across the table. She didn't have to say anything. I heard her loud and clear. By the time the meeting ended, the air in the room was different. Heavier, like something sacred had been scoffed at, and no one knew quite how to repair it. People filtered out quickly, their eyes politely avoiding mine. No one said, "Good job." No one said anything. I sat there a minute longer, hands folded, the weight of 17 years pressing down on my spine. That night, I stayed late. Not because I needed to finish anything, but because I couldn't stand the thought of walking out the door feeling like I'd just been erased. I pulled open the drawer where I kept a stash of notes, phrases, idioms, quotes from clients over the years. There was one I'd saved from our German partners, scribbled hastily during a dinner meeting after we saved a critical contract. "You don't translate words, you translate us." Lena would never understand that, and Liam didn't want to, but I did. I saw it, felt it, carried it. They thought I was a relic, but they hadn't seen what happened when the lights went out, and the algorithms failed, and the call dropped, and all that was left was someone on the other end of the world waiting for someone who could understand. And the woman who had always understood? She was still here, and she was watching. It was the kind of Monday where even the office plants seemed to droop a little. I arrived early, again, more out of habit than optimism. The halls were too quiet, the kind of silence that didn't come from focus, but from foreboding. By 9 a.m., we were all seated in the main conference room. Long, glossy table, coffee already lukewarm. The projector idled on the wall, humming faintly. I took my usual seat near the end, not out of shyness, but practicality. From there, I could see everyone, read the room. And today, the room was tense. Lena, of course, was seated 2 chairs away from Liam. She wore her usual red lipstick and an attitude that could kill crops. Her phone was face up beside her laptop, her screen flickering with tabs, spreadsheets, analytics dashboards, a Slack thread that she kept checking like it was a lifeline. Liam walked in late, as always, with that expressionless face of someone who believed the room should always wait for him. He didn't greet us, just sat, adjusted his watch, and said, "Let's dive in." I didn't know I was about to be erased. Not until Lena opened her mouth. "So," she said, clicking to the second slide in her deck, "I did a comprehensive audit of our digital content systems over the weekend." She glanced briefly at me, a quick flick of the eyes. Surgical. "And I found a major redundancy." My hands froze on the notebook I hadn't yet opened. "We're still relying on manual translation," she continued, as if announcing a public health threat. Like, entire departments dedicated to translating documents, emails, internal memos, when AI tools can do all of that in half the time. Someone shifted uncomfortably near the end of the table. Lena smiled, the kind of smile wolves wear when circling. "There are tools now that do localization, tone matching, sentiment analysis. We're spending hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars on something a well-trained model could handle in seconds." She clicked to another slide, a comparison chart, efficiency metrics, cost margins. My department's name was listed at the top like a failed experiment. "I propose we sunset the internal translation team," she said. "Integrate automated tools into our existing content pipeline. Reduce overhead, increase speed." A pause. Then Liam leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "I've been thinking the same thing." Of course he had. He looked straight at me. "Patricia, we appreciate your tenure, but the reality is, we're restructuring. Effective immediately, we'll begin reallocating your team's resources." A few heads turned toward me. Not with pity, worse. With polite detachment. As if this were inevitable. As if I'd overstayed my relevance. He added with robotic formality, "You'll receive an official notice this week, but this meeting marks the beginning of that transition." The words didn't sting the way I expected. No, it was something deeper, a kind of dull, ancient ache, like a bridge that had been cracking quietly for years, finally giving out beneath your feet. But I didn't flinch. I didn't beg. I stood slowly. The legs of my chair made the smallest sound against the floor. I closed my notebook, clicked my pen, looked around the room, and for a moment, no one breathed. "Before I go," I said, "I want to say something." Liam blinked. Lena tilted her head, as if curious what final act I'd choose. Rage, panic, humiliation. I gave her none of it. "I'm not just a translator," I began. "I'm the bridge between this company and the world it claims to serve." I looked at Liam first. "I've sat at tables in Tokyo where silence means disagreement, and the wrong pronoun ends negotiations. Then, at the marketing team. I've rewritten campaign slogans because what sounds clever in English becomes offensive in Mandarin. Then at Lena. I've taken frantic 3 a.m. calls from our German partners who don't trust auto-generated documents. I've translated not just words, but intent, tone, context, things your algorithm won't catch when $1 million deal depends on a single pause." Lena tried to interrupt. With all due, but I raised a hand. I've seen what happens when companies rely on shortcuts. I've watched partnerships collapse because someone trusted an AI over a person. And when that happens to you, and it will, you'll wonder why the silence you hear isn't just awkward. It's empty. I looked back at Liam. "You think I'm expensive. What you don't realize is that I'm the reason we've kept certain clients, that I've prevented more fallout than you'll ever see reflected in your dashboards." The room was still, unmoving. A few people swallowed hard. "I'm not leaving because I failed," I added. "I'm leaving because you never understood the value of what I protected." And then I smiled. Not for them. For myself. I tucked my notebook under my arm, turned, and walked out. Not broken, not begging. Just done. They could keep their tools, their timelines, their hollow performance metrics. But I would keep my name, my integrity, and, soon, they would realize what they'd lost. Because bridges burn silently. But the fallout is anything but quiet. The walk home felt like moving through a dream. One of those gray, slow-motion ones where you know something is wrong, but can't quite put your finger on what. I didn't take a cab. I couldn't bear the idea of small talk with a driver or the sterile hum of the car radio. I needed space, air, something real beneath my feet. So I walked, heels clicking against the pavement, past all the familiar markers of my commute. Coffee shops, stoops, weathered window displays that hadn't changed in years. Each one passed by me like a blur, a ghost of a routine I wasn't part of anymore. By the time I reached my apartment building, the weight in my chest felt heavier than my laptop bag. My fingers trembled slightly as I fumbled with my keys, and when I stepped inside, into the familiar scent of linen spray and lavender soap, something inside me buckled. It wasn't the job that broke me. It was the quiet way they discarded me, like I was nothing more than a dusty file someone had finally remembered to delete. I stood in the entryway for a long time, coat still on, bag hanging from my shoulder like an afterthought. My apartment had never felt this foreign. I always thought of it as my sanctuary, my refuge from time zones and urgent contracts and phone calls that started with, "Do you have a second?" But now, it felt like a stranger's home. I finally dropped my bag onto the side table, peeled off my coat, and kicked off my shoes. My blouse still clung to me from the heat of the walk, but I couldn't bring myself to change. I moved to the kitchen on autopilot, boiled water, pulled down the chipped mug I always reached for when I needed grounding. The tea steeped too long. I didn't care. I took the mug to the couch, curled up with it in my hands like it was the only thing anchoring me, and just stared at the blank TV screen across the room. 17 years? 17 years of giving everything, my energy, my voice, my loyalty, of being the person who stepped in when things went sideways. The one who soothed offended partners with carefully chosen words. The one who rewrote contracts at 2 a.m. because someone in procurement had used the wrong honorifics. And all it took was a sentence. "We don't need regular translators anymore." They didn't say I was wrong. They said I was obsolete. I leaned back, eyes burning but dry. No tears came, not yet. I'd seen this happen to others. Quiet dismissals, reductions masked as realignments. I always thought I'd be smarter, that I'd see it coming, prepare, pivot. But the truth was, nothing prepares you for being erased by people who never understood your worth to begin with. And somehow, that hurt more than the job itself. I glanced at my phone. No missed calls, no messages. A couple of emails, mostly newsletters. None from the office. No one checked in. Not even Emily from HR, who used to share lemon drops during quarterly reviews. It was like I'd never been there at all. I rose slowly and moved to my bookshelf. Something I hadn't really looked at in weeks. My eyes scanned the rows of dictionaries, cross-cultural business manuals, linguistic theory, and tucked among them, client gifts. A small origami crane from a Tokyo partnership, a wooden box from Frankfurt, a handwritten note from our team in São Paulo. You made us feel heard. I ran my fingers across the letter. Heard. That was the part they didn't understand. That translating wasn't just about words. It was about giving voice to the invisible. Making sure people didn't feel like strangers in a conversation meant to include them. Lena thought it could be replaced by an algorithm. Liam thought trust could be forecasted on a dashboard. They were wrong. I turned on my own laptop, not the company one, which was now deactivated, probably already boxed and filed away. Mine. Clean. Quiet. A blank canvas. I sat with my tea, stared at the screen for a long time, then opened a document. Just a blank page. I didn't write anything yet. I just stared at it, because somewhere, in the emptiness of that page, I saw something I hadn't felt in months. Possibility. Maybe this wasn't a death. Maybe it was a shedding. They thought they buried me, but maybe, just maybe, I was about to bloom. And bloom loudly. Monday came, as it always did, but the air in the building was different. The executive floor, usually buzzing with energy and tension, was subdued, almost too quiet. Even the receptionist, who typically greeted everyone with a chipper "morning," looked unsure of her own voice. She nodded instead, silent, as Liam walked past her, barely acknowledging her presence. The Trident Systems meeting was set for 9:01 a.m. sharp. A high-level video call with the executive team of Yamada & Co. A meticulous, traditional, and notoriously detail-sensitive Japanese partner that Patricia had personally nurtured over the last 5 years. Their expansion deal represented not just revenue, but strategic entry into the Japanese enterprise software market. Everything about the meeting had once been Patricia's terrain. She scheduled every time zone. She selected every phrase with care. She coached internal staff on seating order and conversational pacing. She explained the difference between silence as consent and silence as contemplation. Patricia was the meeting, whether she was physically present or not. But she wasn't here today. Because today, Liam and Lena were running the show. At 8:40 a.m., Lena waltzed into the conference room with her signature confidence, laptop under one arm, half-eaten protein bar in the other. "The translation's already processed," she said, not even looking up. "Everything's been uploaded and synced." Thomas, the lead on the account, glanced at her nervously. "Who reviewed it?" "The software did," she replied, sitting down. "It flags anything that's too informal or missing. I tested it last night. It's clean. Plus, I got the AI voice modulator to read the intro. Super slick." Liam strolled in a minute later, yawning. "Let's keep it tight. I have a board sync at 10. At 8:59, the screen flickered, and the video feed from Tokyo came into view. 3 men sat behind a long lacquered table in a room bathed in soft daylight. Every detail was immaculate. Suits pressed, papers aligned, their demeanor poised. The man at the center was Mr. Sakamoto, CEO of Yamada & Co., a man known for his patience and silence that spoke volumes. Thomas stood to speak. "Good morning, and welcome. We are honored to have this time with you." He clicked a button on his tablet. A mechanical voice filled the room in distorted, overly formal Japanese. Greetings of deepest virtual appreciation to honored partners in joint ambition and technical cooperation. On the screen, Sakamoto's expression did not change, but something in the room's temperature dropped. He said something in Japanese. The software didn't catch it in time. The subtitles appeared 6 seconds late. "We are ready to begin." Lena nudged the microphone. "Yes, of course. We'll begin with the presentation of integration pathways." She clicked to the first slide. It was a mess. The text was misaligned. Some headers had been translated literally, missing tone or embedded idioms. One bullet point read, "Your precious company's big data dreams are awakened," which had once been Patricia's carefully crafted line about cloud analytics, but now sounded like an AI haiku gone wrong. Sakamoto tilted his head slightly. The associate beside him cleared his throat and said something too fast for the software to parse. Silence. Thomas looked at Lena. "Is the mic on?" Lena nodded furiously. "Yes, it's just buffering. Sometimes it does that." Sakamoto looked at the camera, then at someone off screen, then back. In English, slow and deliberate, he said, "We will not stay long." Every muscle in Thomas's body tensed. I'm sorry?" he asked. Sakamoto's tone did not waver. "There is no translator. There is no Patricia-san." Another pause. He looked directly into the lens, eyes calm but resolute. "We speak through people we trust," he said. "What we see here is machine, not respect." Lena stammered. "I assure you the translation software is top-rated. We did several passes." He held up one hand. "Tone is wrong. Word order is strange. Honorifics missing. Phrases awkward. You do not understand our words. You do not understand us." Liam finally spoke up. "Look, Mr. Sakamoto, we are committed to this partnership." But it was too late. Sakamoto folded his hands calmly, as if closing a ritual. "We will review alternatives," he said, "and reconsider meeting when Patricia-san is found." The screen went black. Silence fell over the room like a heavy cloth. No one moved. Lena slowly lowered her hand from the keyboard. "It must have glitched. Or maybe we should have uploaded the secondary file." Thomas buried his face in his hands. "That was the close. That was supposed to be our confirmation meeting." Liam sat back in his chair, stunned. "They walked out." "They didn't walk out," Thomas said quietly. "They closed the door." Outside the conference room, the office carried on as usual, phones ringing, keyboards clacking. But inside, the team finally understood what had happened. They didn't just lose a client. They lost trust. The trust that Patricia had built word by word, pause by pause, handshake by handshake. Lena looked down at her screen. Her fingers trembled slightly over the trackpad. No AI had flagged that. And now, nothing could undo what had just happened. They had dismissed a voice, and in doing so, they silenced themselves. Wednesday morning dawned without fanfare. The office looked the same, neat rows of desks, humming monitors, sunlight slipping through half-open blinds. But beneath the surface, tension had begun to coil like a live wire. It started with a single strange email from legal in Tokyo, then another, then an internal ping from compliance. By 9 a.m., Thomas's inbox had lit up like a Christmas tree. At 10:14 a.m., Liam's office door slammed shut with such force the receptionist dropped her phone. Inside, chaos had begun to unfold. "What do you mean we signed away the implementation rights?" Liam barked, pacing furiously. "That's not what was in the English version." Julia, the intern, young, nervous, and 2 weeks into her very first job, sat hunched at the long conference table, face pale, voice cracking. I don't understand. I uploaded the approved draft. I ran it through the AI for alignment. It showed everything in green." Across the room, Lena was uncharacteristically quiet, staring at the contract in her hands like it had morphed into a weapon. Thomas read Clause 17 out loud, his voice dangerously flat. "Upon execution, full control of implementation strategy and performance oversight shall be transferred to the integrated entity with bonuses issued based on unilateral milestones." He looked up, eyes dark. "That's not what we wrote." "No," Liam agreed, his voice hardening. "It's not. We wrote, shared oversight between parties with joint milestone evaluation and balanced performance bonuses. A silence. The worst kind of silence. The kind you get in hospitals before bad news or in boardrooms right before someone loses their job. Julia scrolled frantically on her laptop. It must have. Maybe the AI adjusted the phrasing for clarity? I used the advanced mode. The tool was supposed to detect legal nuance and harmonize tone. The tutorial said it accounts for formality and contractual symmetry. Symmetry? Thomas exploded. It gave away our authority, our position. This isn't tone. This is legal suicide. Lena snapped out of her silence, snatching a copy from the printer tray. Let me see that. No, this can't be right. I triple-checked the glossary. There's no way it would translate oversight as transfer of control. It must have. It did, Thomas said bitterly. Because no one fluent in Japanese read it. The AI translated it, and you approved it without cross-checking with Patricia, or, God forbid, a certified legal translator. Julia looked like she was about to cry. I didn't think it would matter, she whispered. Everyone said the software was safe. Safe? Liam muttered. We gave away half our international leverage. Clause 23 literally grants first-tier performance bonuses exclusively to them. Not shared, not deferred, exclusively. Thomas shook his head. They didn't change anything. We gave it to them, signed, legally binding in Japan. The English version? Irrelevant. The Japanese version is what governs. Wait, Lena interjected, rising from her chair. Can we backtrack this? Issue a corrected version? Claim a translation error? No, Thomas replied. Not without admitting fault. And even if we could, it would mean admitting we presented incorrect legal language to an international partner. That's not just embarrassing, that's a compliance violation. Liam finally stopped pacing. His face had gone ashen. How much did we just lose? He asked, voice distant. No one answered. Because the truth was, they didn't know. Not exactly. It wasn't just about money. It was power, influence, reputation, strategic leverage in one of the most lucrative software markets on the planet. And now, all gone. Slipped through their fingers like grains of sand, because no one had thought it mattered enough to read between the lines. Because the one person who could have saved them, who would have saved them, had been replaced by a blinking algorithm and a 90-day software license. Julia was now openly crying. I just did what the checklist said. I swear I didn't mean. No one's blaming you, Thomas said quietly. This wasn't your job to manage. You were left holding something no intern should ever touch. Lena sat down heavily. Her mouth was tight. Her carefully painted nails tapped an anxious rhythm on the desk. I thought we were innovating, streamlining. You were gambling, Thomas said, and you lost. Liam rubbed his temples. Get Tokyo back on the line. I want a meeting, today. They won't speak without Patricia, someone muttered. And that was it. The sentence hung there like a verdict. Not without Patricia. Because when the Tokyo partners signed that contract, they trusted her. Not the paper, not the ink. Her precision, her loyalty, her cultural grace. She was the human thread that made those deals breathable. And now that she was gone, what remained? Broken words, a contract full of hollow promises, and a room full of people finally realizing what they'd thrown away in pursuit of convenience. The bridge was gone, and they were already drowning. By Thursday morning, the illusion had finally shattered. Yamada and Koind had gone silent. Not in the polite, diplomatic way Patricia had once carefully explained to the team as respectful pause. No. This was a strategic silence, a final warning. The last email had no pleasantries, no softening. We are freezing all activity until Patricia Delgado resumes communication. Without her, this agreement does not hold meaning. Without her, there is no trust. The legal team flagged the message with red exclamation points. Marketing panicked. Strategy panicked harder. Liam stopped pretending he had it under control. For the first time since donning his CEO title, he was cornered. There was no AI tool to fix this, no automation button to restore respect, only the person they'd cast aside. And so, without fanfare or even the decency of humility, the company sent Patricia a message. We require your support to resolve a high-level issue. Please advise on your availability. It was cold, detached. The same tone they use to reject vendor invoices or reschedule HR training. Patricia read it while sitting on her balcony with a half-empty cup of coffee and a breeze in her hair. She didn't reply immediately. She didn't need to. That kind of message wasn't a request. It was surrender disguised as professionalism. She let them wait until noon. Then, finally, she replied. At 3:17 p.m., the sliding doors opened and Patricia stepped into the building she had once poured her life into. She wore a slate gray coat, sharp black boots, and a scarf from Berlin, a gift from a client long gone, but never forgotten. She walked slowly, deliberately, like she had all the time in the world. Because now, she did. The receptionist blinked. Ms. Delgado, I know the way, Patricia said with a nod. Upstairs, the executive boardroom buzzed like a wasp's nest. Liam stood by the whiteboard, sweating under the collar of his custom-fitted suit. Lena sat with her arms crossed, eyes flicking toward the door every few seconds. Julia, the intern, sat near the corner, face pale and hands clenched tightly in her lap. The room fell silent when Patricia entered. She didn't smile. She didn't offer a polite greeting. She simply took off her coat, folded it neatly over her arm, and placed her bag on the chair beside her before sitting. I was told you need my help, she said calmly, her voice as measured and poised as ever. Liam cleared his throat. Yes. Patricia, as you may have heard, the contract we executed with Yamada & Cohen was misinterpreted. We're facing legal complications and serious risk of losing the entire deal. I read the contract, Patricia said. The Japanese version, the one you had translated automatically. That shut him up. She continued, what you signed isn't just problematic, it's humiliating. You handed them implementation control, top-tier performance bonuses, and strategic discretion over our deployment schedule. And you did it with a smile. Julia flinched. Lena opened her mouth, but Patricia raised a hand. I'm not here to listen to excuses. I'm here because, despite everything, I care about the integrity of the work I built. Liam's lips thinned. We'd like to bring you back on. Temporarily, as a consultant. I'm listening, Patricia said, but I'm not coming back under your terms. Liam blinked. Excuse me? Patricia leaned forward, eyes steady. I have conditions. The silence in the room deepened. First, she said, I want a formal written apology from Julia, not to me, to the Yamada delegation, a letter acknowledging the error in translation, the breach of professionalism, and the misrepresentation of our communication process. Julia's voice cracked. I didn't mean. I know, Patricia said, not unkindly, but meaning doesn't matter, only responsibility does. Liam opened his mouth, but Patricia held up a finger. Second, I want a public clarification issued internally, through the employee newsletter, through HR, through Slack, wherever. It must state that I was removed from my role not for performance, but because of a misguided decision to automate critical human responsibilities. The company will acknowledge that this decision was made without understanding the cultural and financial consequences. Thomas, who had been quiet until now, nodded slowly. That's fair. Third, she said, I want financial compensation, double my previous monthly salary for the duration of the consulting contract, and back pay for the days I was dismissed, starting from the day I was removed without cause. Lena scoffed quietly. Patricia turned to her. Is there something funny? Lena's mouth closed. Liam exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. That's a lot to ask. No, Patricia said. It's exactly what I'm worth. She stood. I didn't come here today for charity or nostalgia. I came because you made a mess that only a human being, one who understands nuance, respect, and consequence, can fix. Julia slowly stood, her voice shaking. Then, I'll write the letter. I should have known better. I wanted to impress people, and I didn't ask the right questions. I'm sorry. Patricia met her eyes. Good. That's where growth begins. She turned to Liam. You'll have my formal agreement in writing within the hour. If you want my help, it comes with acknowledgement. Liam nodded stiffly. And just like that, Patricia picked up her coat. She didn't need validation. She didn't need forgiveness. She had reclaimed something more powerful, respect. And now they would have to earn hers. It was 10:57 a.m. when Patricia stepped back into the building that had once felt like home. She moved like a woman who had already walked through fire and knew she would never be burned by it again. No badge, no ID lanyard, no corporate smile, just presence. The receptionist, new, young, clearly briefed, stood up too quickly. Ms. Delgado, the conference room is ready. Patricia didn't answer. She gave a polite nod and kept walking. The halls were quieter than usual, like even the walls were listening. On the executive floor, everyone was waiting. Thomas leaned against the glass wall, eyes unreadable. Liam stood near the head of the table, arms folded, his jaw set like he was bracing for a storm. Lena sat with her arms crossed and her phone turned screen down, which was rare enough to mark tension. Julia stood, hands clutching a single sheet of paper, her knuckles white, her shoulders square in that way people do when they're trying very hard not to collapse. The room quieted as Patricia entered. No one spoke. She walked to the seat closest to the door, on purpose. She wasn't here to stay. She wasn't here to be reabsorbed. She sat slowly, deliberately, crossed one leg over the other, folded her hands in her lap. Liam cleared his throat. Patricia, thank you for coming. I believe Julia has something to say, Patricia said, cutting through the air with a softness that didn't invite interruption. Julia stepped forward. She looked at everyone, then looked down. Her voice, when it came, was fragile, but audible. I want to apologize. To Patricia, and to the entire team. No one moved. I processed the Yamada contract. I assumed the tools we had were sufficient. I relied on automation because I was told it would be smarter, faster, cleaner. I didn't question it. I didn't ask for oversight. I didn't ask for help. She blinked quickly, as if willing the tears not to fall. I treated translation like it was a checkbox. I treated culture like it was copy. And I contributed to a decision that hurt this company, damaged a relationship, and dismissed the years of work that Patricia had done to build trust. There was a pause. Her voice cracked a little, but she kept going. I'm sorry for all of it. For not understanding. For not asking. For standing silent while others disrespected someone I should have learned from. She bowed slightly, awkwardly but sincerely. Patricia didn't move right away. She just looked at Julia, measured her, not with judgment, but clarity. Then she stood. I accept your apology, she said, because I know it came from a place of reflection, not performance, and not. Julia let out a shaky breath of relief. But I didn't come here to accept apologies, Patricia continued, turning toward the rest of the room. I came here so you could look me in the eye. Liam straightened. Lena shifted. You didn't just fire me, Patricia said, her voice calm and cutting. You erased me. You acted like what I did was mechanical, replaceable. And when your illusion of efficiency collapsed, you didn't reflect. You panicked. She walked slowly toward the center of the room, her heels soft on the carpet. You thought I'd rush back to fix it, like some mercenary with a language degree, but I'm not a fixer. Her eyes landed on Liam. I'm not your fallback. She looked at Lena. I'm not your regret. She returned her gaze to the room at large. And I am not your savior. The words echoed. I am a professional. I was dismissed publicly, without cause, after 17 years of loyal service. I was humiliated in a room full of people who used to call me indispensable. And now you want me back, not because you understand my worth, but because you're afraid of what you can't control. Liam stepped forward, tone quiet. Patricia, we've taken steps. We've agreed to your terms. We're ready to reinstate. I'm not interested, she said. He stopped short. You're turning this down? I'm not negotiating, Patricia said gently. I'm declining. A stunned silence. You think this is about salary or position or pride, but it's not. It's about the fundamental misunderstanding that led to all this. You don't see people. You see processes, costs, timelines. She picked up her coat. I am not a line item on your P&L. I am not a tool to be used when convenient. I'm a human being, with experience, with dignity, with value. She turned toward the door, but paused. You'll find someone else, she said. Maybe even rebuild the bridge I held together for years. But you'll never find another me. Then she smiled, not bitter, not smug, free, and walked out, leaving behind a room full of people who, for the first time in a long time, understood the true cost of arrogance and the quiet, breathtaking power of someone who finally chose herself. 3 days after Patricia walked out of the glass-walled boardroom for the last time, a soft knock came at her door. It wasn't a courier in uniform. It was a man in a charcoal gray suit with white gloves and a slight bow, who handed her a sealed envelope wrapped in rice paper. No logo, no stamps, only her name, hand-painted in sumi ink. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single page, crisp, elegant, deliberate. The top half was handwritten in Japanese calligraphy, a brush-danced composition that seemed to breathe. Below, a careful English translation. Patricia Delgado-san, we witnessed your strength. We recognize your grace. We no longer see you as a vendor or a representative. We see you as a necessary voice, a steward of understanding. We humbly invite you to serve as Director of Cultural Strategy for Yamada & Co.'s International Division. You are not a translator. You are a bridge. With respect and trust, Sakamoto Hiroshi, CEO Patricia read it once, twice, a third time, not for clarity, for confirmation that this was real. And as her fingers brushed the thick, textured paper, a tear slid down her cheek, not from sadness, not even from relief. It was the quiet release of 17 years of being unseen, compressed into one sentence that said, "We knew what you were all along." The position was hers, negotiated on her terms. No games, no power plays. They offered an office in Tokyo, a private suite with a view of Mount Fuji, a team, a car, prestige. But Patricia declined the symbols. Instead, she made a counteroffer. I want a global team, she told them on the first strategy call, built on trust, not rank, with members chosen not from resumes, but from recognition of quiet brilliance. Mr. Sakamoto smiled softly and bowed. You do not want a department, he said. You want a movement. I want a culture, she replied. One that doesn't have to ask women to apologize for existing. And thus, Kizuna was born. Not a company, not a brand, a philosophy, a fluid, human-centered organization dedicated to repairing the deepest flaw in global business. The illusion that connection can be automated, that relationships can be downloaded. That language is a tool, not a trust. Her first task? Building her team. She didn't post job ads. She didn't reach out to recruiters. She went back to her own memories, her inbox, her notebooks filled with scribbled names and whispered thank yous from past conferences. She called Ana first, a polyglot from Barcelona who once corrected a CEO's faux pas with a single nod, and had been quietly passed over for promotions by men who read bullet points but never tone. Then Fatima, a Moroccan linguist who had once mediated between two warring client factions without raising her voice, but was pushed out for not blending in. And Marina, who had translated in conflict zones, then ended up in a call center. Her trauma minimized, her skills deemed overqualified. To each one, Patricia didn't offer a job. She offered a place, a seat at a table that didn't require them to shrink to fit. And one by one, they said yes. Their meetings were unlike anything in the corporate world. They started with silence. They ended with gratitude. They prioritized listening over performance. Cultural nuance was not a footnote. It was the core. Within 3 months, Kizuna advised its first major client, a North American biotech firm struggling to secure distribution partnerships in Seoul. Patricia's team rewrote their communications plan, not just the words, but the attitude. They trained the leadership on Korean business customs, on how to accept silence as part of dialogue, on how to offer a business card without dishonor. The contract was signed, not with celebration, but with reverence. And the client? They whispered about Kizuna behind closed doors like it was a secret weapon, a key. More followed. Kizuna didn't market, it didn't pitch, it invited. And behind it all was Patricia, leading not as a manager, but as a curator of voices. She spoke less now. She listened more. Because that's what bridges do. They hold space. They bend, but they do not break. She became a ghost in the corridors of companies that once dismissed her. A name spoken by execs who now begged for meaning beyond metrics. Her face never on a billboard, but always behind the quiet click of a respectful contract. And the irony? Liam's company, now flailing, directionless, burning through consultants, once tried to call her again. Patricia didn't respond, because she wasn't interested in being their solution. She was building something bigger than retribution. She was building a culture of respect, where no woman would ever have to explain why she mattered again. Patricia never raised her voice. Not when she was fired. Not when she was called back. Not even when the contract she'd carefully translated for years was shredded by a machine that couldn't tell nuance from noise. And she certainly didn't raise it now. Because what she was building didn't require shouting. It required presence. Kizuna was never about proving anyone wrong. It wasn't born from spite or even grief. It was born from one simple, stubborn belief, that people matter more than process. She repeated that often. To her team, to her clients, to herself. People matter, and so do their voices. It had been just over a year since she turned down the consulting offer from her former company. A year since she left behind the boardroom that had once tried to replace her with a monthly software subscription. And in that year, the world around her had begun to shift. The firm she had once given 17 years to was now barely recognizable. The silence from Tokyo hadn't been temporary, it had been prophetic. Other partners followed suit, quietly exiting deals that had once been cornerstones of the company's global credibility. Investors grew cautious. Stakeholders began whispering. A firm built on efficiency had forgotten the one thing no algorithm could replicate: relationship. Liam stopped appearing in promotional videos. His LinkedIn profile grew quiet. Lena moved on to another firm, someplace flashier, louder, somewhere that hadn't yet learned to ask the right questions. And Patricia? She was just getting started. Kizuna was no longer a passion project or a bold experiment. It was a living, breathing network of professionals from every corner of the globe. Women and linguists who had once been overlooked were now leading diplomatic workshops, crafting cross-cultural strategies, and advising the very corporations that once told them to simplify their tone. Patricia's vision was spreading, not through marketing, but through transformation. Because when clients worked with Kizuna, they felt the difference. Meetings slowed down. Communication deepened. Contracts became clearer. Disputes fewer. Not because they were better at language, but because they were better at listening. Respect was no longer a tagline. It was policy. In one particularly moving moment, a CEO from a South American telecom company, previously known for bulldozing negotiations, stood in a strategy session with Kizuna and said, "I've never been taught how to speak with someone before, only how to speak at them." Patricia didn't blink. That's what we're here to unlearn, she replied. She wasn't chasing revenge. That would have been too small for her. She was chasing growth, not just for herself, but for an entire generation of professionals taught to shrink, to self-edit, to survive quietly in the margins of boardrooms. Now they had a seat at the table. In fact, they were building the table. The invitations started coming. Panels, think tanks, conferences on cross-cultural leadership. Patricia declined most of them, not out of arrogance, but clarity. She didn't want to be famous. She wanted to be effective. But one invitation stood out: a global leadership summit in Singapore focused on redefining trust in the age of automation. She accepted, and when she stepped onto that stage, wearing a deep navy suit stitched with a pattern from her grandmother's village in Mexico, she carried more than a title. She carried every overlooked woman who'd ever been called too much, every voice that had been filtered, muted, edited down to appease the fragile egos of people with power and no perspective. She looked out at the crowd, over 500 people, executives and diplomats and academics, and said, "Let me be clear. I didn't come here to attack technology. I believe in innovation, but I believe more in intention." She paused. Technology without humanity will always fail, because connection cannot be coded, respect cannot be replicated, and trust cannot be downloaded. More silence. Then, respect is not a bonus. It is the foundation of cooperation. Without it, you are not doing business. You are simply exchanging noise. No slides. No flashy graphics. Just that voice. Steady, warm, unyielding. The applause that followed wasn't loud at first, but it grew. Not because she demanded it, because the people in the room recognized something they'd almost forgotten: the power of being heard. Back at Kizuna, her team watched the live stream from their co-working spaces, cafes, and home offices around the world. Anna wiped her eyes. Fatima sent a voice message in Arabic. She said what we've always felt. Marina smiled from her kitchen table in Zagreb. "She's not saving us," she whispered. "She's just reminding us we were always worthy." And Patricia? She flew home, barefoot on the plane, her speech notes folded neatly in her lap. She didn't feel victorious. She felt anchored. Because in a world rushing to digitize everything sacred, she had chosen the slow path. The path of people, of language, not just as transaction, but transformation. Of silence, not as void, but as respect. She hadn't left behind a legacy of revenge. She had left behind a message. You don't need to shout to change the world. You just need to know what's worth speaking for. And then, you speak, not to conquer, but to connect.